in what's going to be one of the craziest off seasons in recent memory for the Toronto Maple Leafs, with multiple free agents on the horizon. An insider has dropped a ridiculous report surrounding Mitch Marner and his future in Toronto, but not only surrounding Mitch Marner, surrounding one Canadian player that we're all familiar with that has fans fired up. We're going to break down this report and discuss what it means going forward. Is not only is it ridiculous, this could very well alter the whole plan of the Toronto Maple Leafs this season. Stay tuned for all that in this episode, but before we get into it, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, it's the place to be for daily Leafs content. If you want to help us towards our goal of course, the big goal of 16,000 subscribers, make sure to subscribe button. Thank you guys again for your continued support. Darius, taking a bit of a step back today from the, obviously, the playoffs are just around the corners, and we tons to talk about that. We have the Florida Panthers tomorrow, and then, of course, the Lightning on Wednesday. A ton of different things going on. We're going to be talking about now a very interesting report that dropped from The Athletic. And you can see this here. Two trusted pundits with The Athletic, James Myrtle and Jonas Siegel, have tossed around the idea of Toronto Maple Leafs targeting Connor McDavid if he hits the free agency market, should the team be unable to bring back Mitch Marner and or John Tavares. Now, this is essentially a swap of Mitch Marner for McDavid. Now, there's a bunch of different things here, and obviously we're going to be focusing more so on the side of, Mitch Marner leaving and those things, but Connor McDavid's been a name that's been linked to the Leafs for a while if he becomes available, and we figured it'd be a good time with the off day here to discuss this a little bit, and I'm curious to see what you all think about it in the comment section. This one's a little bit crazy.
Yeah, it's a little bit out there, that's for sure. And we're skipping over a couple things, right? At this point, right? We're skipping to the part where Mitch Marner doesn't return, right? I think the first priority for the Toronto Maple Leafs is to re-sign Mitch Marner. I still think that that is the case. I just don't think that he wants to do that until the season's done. He wants to evaluate all his options and see what's out there in terms of what other teams can give him. And he's been saying that since the start of the season. So I guess we have to respect that as well, right? So, and then in terms of John Tavares, we don't know what's happening there. We don't know what his ask is at this point in time. It's the same thing. We have to wait till the playoffs are done. And then a lot of this, will be determined on how the Leafs play. We haven't seen them play any differently than they have in the playoffs the last 8 years or so, right? Like the most likely outcome is that that happens again, right? Like it's very hard to change habits and stuff like that. So, it is the most likely outcome, although I hope that doesn't happen. I hope they win 3 rounds. I hope they go to the Stanley Cup final, right? And I think that they have the ability to do that this year. But again, we haven't seen it, right? So I think if Mitch Marner does leave, then they're going to have to really consider all their options. Everyone who's available this year in free agency, besides, the biggest fish, who is Mitch Marner and currently a Toronto Maple Leaf, isn't really, there's no real like wow factors out there, any big name players, right? I think there's a lot of really good players out there, but no Connor McDavid, there's no Mitch Marner. Obviously, Mitch Marner's on the table, but he's a Leaf right now. You know what I mean? But I think it could get very interesting if they decide, why don't we wait a year, especially if Connor McDavid doesn't re-sign on July 1st this year, which he's eligible to do. So we'll get to that later in the video too. But I think things can get a little crazy.
Yeah, and that's obviously going to be Mitch Marner would have to go elsewhere, and then, of course, the pivot to McDavid. If they think they have a chance at Connor McDavid, it makes things very interesting. You see the exact quote here. What if, for instance, McDavid opts not to sign an extension with the Oilers this summer, which is something we're going to be keeping a close eye on as the Leafs fans? If he were to leave Edmonton, the chance to play for his hometown team, and with, of course, his close pal Matthews, who share the same agent, is appealing. So that's an interesting thing. And, of course, jumping ahead of ourselves a little bit, but this actually does have pretty big implications as it pertains to the Mitch Marner situation, because if they think they have any sort of shot at getting Connor McDavid, maybe that would, I don't think they're going to go out and say, okay, let's not re-sign Mitch Marner for the long shot we get Connor McDavid, but it would be a backup plan, and B, just be something that's definitely going to be considered within that, because there's a lot of different teams, there's a lot of different things happening surrounding, Mitch Marner that are interested in him. We'll dive into that in a little bit here. And then Connor McDavid, we all know how good he is, but it is a little bit interesting. Now, Leon Draisaitl resigns, so you'd assume that there's going to be a lot of dialogue there. Depending on how this season goes, coming off a cup appearance last year, seeing how it goes this year, this is a big year for the Edmonton Oilers. And you look at the cap projection, like they'd be able to afford him when he becomes a free agent if you let Mitch Marner walk. Now, if you get Mitch Marner back, of course, there's multiple questions to be asked there. And as it pertains to Mitch Marner in general, it all comes down to specifically how Mitch Marner is going to hold up, or how the Leafs are going to do in the playoffs this upcoming playoff run. Because if they go out and they do terrible, I could see, and maybe it won't be McDavid, but if you let Mitch Marner walk, you replace him with either a big fish like McDavid the year following, or maybe somebody else like Sam Bennett, or even, I don't think it's going to happen. This is a little bit crazy, but maybe, the Oilers, if they don't think they can extend McDavid, look to trade him at next year's trade deadline or something crazy like that. Things like that happen, and all of this has implications on the Leafs tying up a ton of salary if they don't do well in the playoffs this year.
Well, we've seen it like time and time again. If Mitch Marner leaves the Toronto Maple Leafs this summer, it's going to be another example of it. So if Connor McDavid doesn't sign a contract extension, July 1st or close to July 1st this summer, if it lingers into, even August, you start asking questions like, why? I thought we were on the same page here. Don't you want to be an Oiler? If you're on the Oilers side, you start asking questions like, is this guy going to leave? Because we've seen it with John Tavares, right? Mitch Marner might do it this summer. There's other players that have done the same thing. And yes, Leon Draisaitl will just resign there, and you would think that Connor McDavid wants to stay. But at the same time, the question the whole time has been, why can't the Oilers build a team around Connor McDavid? And then they finally did last year. They go to the Stanley Cup final, and then they basically give away Holloway and Broberg for free, and now they're struggling again, right? And the guys that they brought in to kind of replace them are struggling, and it doesn't look like, I don't know, we'll see what happens. They're playing LA again in the first round this year, but LA looks a lot stronger this year. Edmonton, not so much. Again, they could end up beating the Kings again, but what happens after that, right? If they don't go back to the Stanley Cup final, if they don't win a Stanley Cup, maybe McDavid's thinking like, look what they did in Toronto. They have built and given this core group of players every opportunity available. Why don't I go there and try and get that opportunity to win a Stanley Cup where I'm from? Because the Oilers are not giving that to me. So I think it's going to get very interesting. And again, if he doesn't re-sign ASAP come this summer, as soon as he's eligible to do that, you got to start asking questions.
I mean, no, the Leafs aren't opposed to that. They were going to make a trade and perhaps would have if Mitch Marner would have not vetoed it, or I guess, activated his no move clause for Mikko Rantanen, which they wouldn't want to sign him to a 9-figure deal, right? So it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this will continue to play out. And you're starting to see articles about the Bruins reportedly being interested in, Mitch Marner, according to Zero Second. Apologies for pronouncing that wrong, but Zero Second of NHL trade rumors, the Bruins could be the team he lands with. The Bruins aren't just interested, they're all in. We're talking about a potential $14 million AAV mega deal to steal Marner from Toronto. This isn't just about adding talent, it's about sending a thunderous message. The Bruins are back and they're coming for the cup. You could see this happen, and you could see the plan Bs for, in the Bruins case here, Brock Besser, Nikolai Ehlers, the exact same ones the Leafs are going to have if the Leafs are unable to bring back Mitch Marner. But again, it all comes back to how they do in this playoff run. If they do really well, they'll probably bring back both Mitch Marner and John Tavares. If they get eliminated anywhere short of what I would consider a Stanley Cup Finals appearance, then you have to have some serious conversations surrounding it. And of course, Connor McDavid's right on that on the list as it pertains to guys that the Leafs would hopefully try to pivot to in the following year. But I think regardless of that, the biggest storyline here is what the Leafs do with Mitch Marner. We're only now about a week and a half away from the playoffs, which means we could either be, a month or two away from free agency, or we could start having these conversations depending on how the Leafs do a lot sooner than I think a lot of fans, myself included, want to feel because of how fast the season went by.
Yeah, and the one thing that you touched on that we haven't really gotten into in this video is Mitch Marner leaving. Like, we're dissecting Connor McDavid and what might happen there, but Mitch Marner could very realistically leave this offseason, this summer, right? And there's a lot of teams like the Boston Bruins, like you just mentioned, with that report. We know that the New York Rangers are planning to do something big this offseason. They wanted to go out and get Mikko Rantanen. There was a report about that a couple months ago, or plan B would be Mitch Marner. Well, now Rantanen is gone, right? So I think plan B for a lot of teams is now plan A this offseason, which is go after Mitch Marner and offer him the max that you basically can. Maybe not the max, but like 14 and a half, or maybe even 15, right? Because the salary cap's going up, and I think a lot of teams would like to just add him and then kind of continue to build around that. So we know that the New York Rangers are, involved as well. I'm sure there's a lot of, I think Carolina is probably involved as well, right? Like, we've heard kind of rumblings about that and rumors about that as well. So there's a lot of teams that want him and will pay him more than the Leafs will pay him, at least, every year. The Leafs can still offer him the most, right, with the 8th year and get the AAV down a little bit, but it really depends if he wants to stay at Toronto Maple Leaf. But again, everything relies and depends on what happens in a week and a half in the playoffs. If if the same thing happens and he does not perform, like we've seen time and time again, it's not going to happen, right? And a lot of people bring up the stats, the goal scoring, the points, the fact that he leads the team in points in the playoffs in this era. We're not looking at that. We're looking at moments. We're looking at, like, can you change a game, not put up, 7 points in a game where you win 7-2 in game 2. We know you can do that, right?
Yeah.
Like, what about the other stuff, the physicality? So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and it all comes down to a week from this Saturday is when the Leafs, presumably are supposed to play. That's their tentative schedule there. So let us know below what your thoughts are. A little bit crazy to talk about. At the end of the day, these reports are flying, and it all comes down to this playoff run and Mitch Marner. So thank you guys for watching. See you later.